provided to the Bernardsville News, Courier News, and the Star Ledger, filed with the municipal clerk, and posted on the municipal bulletin board on December 24th, 2020. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Get my flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I have a proclamation to read. Let me just get it here. Whereas Congress designated the third full week in March to be National Poison Prevention Week, NPPW, in 1961, and since then, this week has helped to raise national awareness of the dangers of potentially dangerous medicines, household products and chemicals, environmental contaminants, and other substances. And whereas poison control centers across the country will focus the public's attention on the free, life-saving services provided by poison centers, as well as educating the public on ways to prevent poisoning exposures. And whereas the New Jersey Poison Control Center, a division of the Department of Emergency Medicine at Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School, provides 24/7 expert medical treatment advice, drug information, and prevention education at no cost to the public through the Poison Help Hotline. And whereas the New Jersey Poison Control Center specialized medical professionals, doctors, pharmacists, and nurses provide accessible, free, and confidential poisoning medical treatment advice and information to all. And whereas the New Jersey Poison Control Center services save healthcare dollars by eliminating thousands of unnecessary emergency department room visits and result in shorter lengths of stay for patients hospitalized for poisoning. And whereas the New Jersey Poison Control Center is instrumental in the surveillance and management of poisoning exposures across the state, including the use, misuse, and abuse of medications, legal and illicit drugs, environmental contaminants, bioterrorism agents, and common household products and chemicals. And whereas the New Jersey Poison Control Center is involved in New Jersey's efforts in homeland defense, counterterrorism, emergency preparedness and pandemic response, and biosurveillance. And whereas the COVID-19 hotline at the New Jersey Poison Control Center, a collaboration with the New Jersey Department of Health, has assisted nearly 90,000 additional callers to provide up-to-date, unbiased, accurate information, as well as medical guidance and links to services. And whereas unintentional poisoning is the leading cause of unintentional injury death in New Jersey, outnumbering deaths by motor vehicles and firearms. And whereas a poison is defined as anything that can cause harm if taken in the wrong amount, in the wrong way, or by the wrong person. And whereas, although most reported poison exposures involve children 5 years old and younger, most poisoning deaths occur in adults 20 to 59. And whereas overdose deaths from prescription opioids, over-the-counter medications, and illegal drugs remain at epidemic proportions for both New Jersey and the United States. And whereas lead exposure and carbon monoxide poisoning remain major public concerns. And whereas poison center experts encourage the public not to guess, wait for symptoms, or waste time looking up medical information online when potential poisoning exposures occur, call 1-800-222-1222, text 973-339-0702, or chat www.njpies.org. And whereas all residents should save the Poison Help Hotline in their cell, home, and office phones, because a fast response can make all the difference in preventing serious injury and saving lives. Now, therefore, I, Mary Jane Canos, Mayor of the Borough of Bernardsville, do hereby proclaim the week of March 21st to 27th, 2021 as National Poison Prevention Week in New Jersey, and encourage all citizens to pledge their commitment to ensuring the safety of themselves, their families, and their communities. Whew, that was a lot, but good information. And Anthony, if we could put those phone numbers and text numbers on the website so that people can access them if they need them.
Sure, we'll do.
All right, moving right along. We now have a public session. If anyone from the public would like to speak, you can either raise your hand in the participants thing, or if you can't do it online, just put your hand up and we'll try and get everybody. Please, your comments are limited to 3 minutes, and please give your name and your address. If you're reading something that is written, please give it to Anthony or email it to Anthony. Anthony will be holding up a 3-minute timer, so keep your eye on that when you speak. I see hands up, and I thought Christina had her real hand up, so I will let you go first because you got that up really fast. Just unmute yourself. You're muted, Christina, so can she unmute? There you go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Johnny. I am a resident of Bernardsville. I am a small business owner of Bernardsville, and I have 2 stepsons in the high school here in Bernardsville. I am here to speak my support of the resolution for the Main Street USA. I'm so excited about this initiative. It is so needed, and I think that this initiative would pivot our revitalization of the town in such a positive way. As a small business owner, I am constantly talking to people coming into the store, and that is one thing I always hear is, why are there so many empty building storefronts in town? Why are there so many vacant areas? And it's so frustrating to have to explain everything to people, especially people that are coming in that aren't familiar with the town and the borough. We have this exciting, great new restaurant that just opened up where Rodolfo's was. And I think that, this is going to bring a lot of traffic into town that is expecting to have a town that reflects what the restaurant is. And so for something that would help to revitalize the town, I think it's just it's something that is not even, doesn't require little effort or thought, that it just should be a no-brainer. It's something that we need. It's a program that will allow the community to all take, participate in, and it's just community-based. It's important. We've been trying to do something in town for quite a while now. I moved here in 2015 and started my business 3.5 years ago. And next to me is an empty storefront that I believe it's been empty for 8 years, which is just so boggling. It boggles my mind. So anything that would help, I think, is extremely important, that everyone on this borough council supports this. It is really just something exciting, and I think this town, this community, it's such a great community, and we should all embrace this and really work together to make it even better than it is. This community supports each other. All the small businesses do what they can to really go beyond to make this such a great community. And I hope that all of you are on board with this, and thank you for the time.
Thanks, Christina. Isaac, I see Isaac Kramer.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name's Isaac Kramer, and my address is 10 Station Place in Metuchen. New Jersey, and it's my pleasure to address you tonight. My official title is also as Executive Director of the Metuchen Downtown Alliance, a position which I've served in since 2016. I also want to add, during that beautiful weather yesterday, I visited your town on my way to Jockey Hollow, where my boys and I walked a 2-mile circuit there. And I have to tell you, of all the towns I visited, it was one of the most charming small towns with loads of potential. And I'm so excited for you to be taking a good look at this Main Street approach. So for those who aren't familiar, Main Street is the leading voice for preservation-based economic development in the US. Our program in New Jersey was started in 1989, and the organization I lead is one of 21 Main Street programs in New Jersey. There's rigorous accreditation standards. Among these are to have a historic preservation ethic, to have a full-time manager, and to participate in ongoing training for staff and volunteers. But if I could point to our experience in Metuchen since 2016, we've had $109 million of investment in our downtown. Over 120 businesses started, of which 80% are still here today. But that only tells you part of the picture. We also had 20,501 volunteer hours. And when you add that up, that was valued, if we had to buy it in the market, at $523,742 of people's time they gave to make the downtown better. For every dollar of public funds we received, we returned $82.81 of private investment in our downtown. That's even higher than the national rate, which is about $32.56. But the classic question, Mrs. Mayor, show me the money, that we saw in Metuchen, of the grants that were given out, over 3.3 million to Main Street communities. We were among 18 communities that on average received $186,630 in the last 2 years, except the average tells you one thing, the total tells you more. Last year, as part of our COVID response, we were fortunate to receive $655,628, which we then regave to over 40 businesses to help them with their COVID response and recovery. That's why we only lost 6 businesses last year and had 14 additional businesses open. So really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, I wish you all the best. You have a wonderful town. And tonight, I hope you take a good look at this. And as you think about these next steps, please know, from our experience in Metuchen, we only have good things to say about Main Street. And again, we wish the best to our friends and our neighbors just north of us.
Mayor, do you mind if I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Isaac, first, congratulations. It sounds like it's been a huge success.
Thank you.
What things do you attribute that success? What did you guys do right?
So I have a 50-page annual report, which I'm happy to give.
I don't need all 50 pages.
Thank you. But it's an ongoing program, and the big difference between communities that did well during COVID and those that are struggling a bit is to have someone there day in, day out who helped to guide communities through this. I can tell you within the first few weeks, and we're about 1 week away from the 1-year anniversary when this became real for us, I was on the phone with 50 businesses a day, trying to guide them through all the programs, connect them to resources. That's why among our 335 businesses in Metuchen, they received over $13 million of CARES Act money, NJEDA money, which helped them get through this. So ongoing program. The role of volunteers is crucial. Stable public funding was another key. I shared with you the stats, which I'll pass on to your clerk. But we did see that return on investment. For every dollar of public funds, we saw $82.81 of additional investment. So really, fundamentally, we created an environment in which people felt comfortable to give their time, but more importantly, to give their dollars and invest in our town.
Actually, Isaac, if I could recant my statement, if you'd be willing to share, I would love to see your 50-page report.
I'd be more than happy. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Olivia. I participated. I was actually one of the facilitators of the statewide call for the Main Street programs. And she was one of the most together of all the participants and very proactive following up, which I appreciate. And I'm especially grateful for the invitation to address you tonight. So yes, I will follow up.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Isaac.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You bet. I see Michelle Conover.
Yep. Hi, thank you for allowing me this time to speak. I'm Michelle Conover. I live at 16 Burroughs Ave, Bernardsville. I've been living in town for 18 years. However, I did graduate from Bernards High, so I've been in this area for all of my, I'm not going to tell you how many years, a long time. I'm so glad that Christina spoke first because I can just piggyback on what she said. I think we all know that revitalization is definitely what Bernardsville needs. I've seen it in the 18 years that I've been here. When we first moved in, there were many more storefronts vacant. There were not a ton of activities that went on in the downtown. But I can honestly attest, and you all can too, because you've seen it, for the past 3 years, there's been like a resurgence of activities. And that mostly has to do with downtown Bernardsville. And that's Olivia, who spearheaded all of this. And her enthusiasm is contagious. She gets volunteers to help her. I've participated in several of the events. I think even with the mayor, I think we were next to each other during the trunk or treat at the library. And I was upset when I ran out of candy and you didn't. But these types of activities are fantastic. And they've generated a lot of volunteers, a lot of participation by town residents. However, Olivia is now reaching out for help. She's saying, look, guys, I can't do this by myself anymore. And I've done the research. I've gone out and found out what the best programs are. And I listened to that presentation last week, and I was blown away by it. It's amazing. And I really want to encourage the council members to vote yes for this, because I'm not really sure why you would vote no. This is something that is going to revitalize Bernardsville. It's going to get the residents excited. And all of the information is right there in one place for this new organization, if it is adopted, to use. And to me, like Christina said, it's a no-brainer. So I'm encouraging council members to vote yes, because, you're voting for Bernardsville, and you're voting for a resident like me who wants to see more of these activities and doesn't want to see the empty storefronts anymore. And so I'm encouraging you all to vote yes. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Michelle. Johanna, so you had your hand up. I saw you. Where'd you go? There you are. Okay.
Good evening, Johanna Wissinger, 81 Washington Quarter Road. It was well said before me, but I wanted also to endorse Olivia Manning's arrangement for us to know about and for the council to vote on the Main Street, New Jersey. I'm particularly have a soft spot for her attitude towards community spirit, and I appreciate all of the council members who also have that. Especially I see Mayor Knus doing a lot of things that do that. I think it's important for raising children, for the security feeling for seniors, and just for the well-being of the citizens in general. My second thing is I just want to say, since Mayor Knus addressed poison concerns, that and some of them are very dramatic and very serious, but want to keep in mind, while I have a platform, that we should be aware that there is lead in water for homes that are older from pipe joints, and that well testing is a great idea. It's a little bit slower, lead poisoning, but it's serious. Also, I think the Environmental Commission will be approaching and keep working on more awareness that lawn chemicals and fertilizers are deleterious for our health and for our water system. So those are kind of poisons too. So keep those chemicals in mind, because I think we're going to keep, I know the Environmental Commission wants to keep working on having people aware. Lawns are beautiful, but we have to rethink some of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna. Cheryl Mataluna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cheryl Mataluna, and I'm at 160 Old Army Road in Bernardsville. And I also wanted to express my support for the Main Street project. I've lived here for 30 years and have seen a lot of changes as well. And I can tell you, as a realtor, one of the most important things my clients are looking for in an area to move to is a vibrant downtown. What is there to do on the weekend? they do question why there are empty storefronts. And, you know, I always tell them we have a lot of good businesses here, but we have to keep improving on that. And I think the amount of money that we have to invest in this project, we're going to see a huge return on our real estate values, because that is what drives the real estate values, what your downtown has to offer. So I really hope that you'll consider passing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yep.
Last one I see is Olivia.
Hey guys, I really just wanted to say thank you to folks who have been very supportive, not just recently in the last weeks, but over the last 4 or so years that we've been doing what we've been doing. We've been pretty heavily focused on just one really small component these last few years, but moving forward, it's key to encompass all of the components that Main Street includes. I realize that some folks are concerned about the way others may have run their organizations in the past. I hear it, I feel it, I understand it, and I don't want to be it. It's not about me, it's not about one person. This program is about as many people as we can get together from all areas of the community to do the work that needs to be done. This is not, oh, one person's just going to do it and we're going to magically turn the town around in a year from now or 2 years from now or maybe 3. What's going to happen is we all come together in some capacity and we do the work, which is a lot, and we get it done and we make it happen. It's not about people or individual personalities, egos, opinions, any of that. It's about doing the work. So I do encourage everyone, of course, to vote for this, because at the end, it's not about me. It's not about the organization. It's about the town. It's about our community, and we need to do this together. And this is where we need to start. So thank you for the support for over the years from the entire community, those who are not here tonight, and those of you who are very kindly saying some really wonderful words. Thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. And we all at Downtown Bernardsville definitely appreciate you guys supporting us. So thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for all you have done over the past couple of years. Did anyone else wish to speak?
Do we have Shireen has her hand up?
Oh, okay. Shireen.
Hi, sorry, my 2 kids are in the background, so I'm trying to be unobtrusive. But I just wanted to chime in case there's not enough support. I went to one of the first meetings when we moved here a few years ago. Olivia, I think you did a great job. Just want to say, moving here from the Philadelphia area, I'm a big believer in the power of public-private partnerships. One of my big clients there was the Philadelphia, the Fairmount Park Conservancy, that worked a lot with both private and public entities to really create public space and work with business improvement districts, community development corporations. And I see this Main Street program as very much like that, bringing people with common interests together, taking what's really a relatively small amount of public dollars and leveraging that by working with businesses and working with volunteers. It makes me very hopeful about what we can do for downtown Bernardsville. So thanks for the chance.
Thank you, Shireen. Oh, I just need your address.
37 Old Colony Road.
Thank you. Anyone else? I do not see hands. Anthony, do you see any hands?
No, I don't see anybody.
All right, then I will close the public session. We have a public hearing now on Ordinance 2021-1875, a bond ordinance appropriating $2,550,000 and authorizing the issuance of $2,183,800 bonds or notes of the borough for various improvements or purposes authorized to be undertaken by the Borough of Bernardsville in the County of Somerset, New Jersey. Would anyone and Tom, as our finance chair, would you like to just give a brief overview of what this is?
Yes, so this is looking at items that are long-term investments for the borough, and the main largest component of this is approximately $1.3 million to do remediation on the dam, as well as some fire equipment. So the bond that we're issuing here is for mainly those spending priorities this year.
Tom, a question. And I was thinking about this today and forgot to mention it when you and I spoke. The recent increase in interest rates. I know when we made this decision, it seems like 3 weeks ago, rates were below 1%. Have we heard from Leslie if rates have materially changed and if it affects the decision at all?
Leslie is on, so can she answer that?
Our bond counsel is still very optimistic about our rates.
That was a good answer.
Well, the other thing I would say is I think, Chad, we looked at rates when they were around predicted, we don't know, to be 1%. And I think we've actually used in our calculation a higher number, Leslie, 1.3 or 1.
Did we? Okay, I thought we discussed it. I didn't know that we used 1.3. So that makes
sense. I think we built in a little bit of buffer.
Good.
Mayor, may I add to this?
Certainly.
Just if you look to, we're consolidating the debt and putting it into one big issue. The way we've structured it, so we have some old bands and stuff. So when we do this, we're packaging it so it'll be as appealing as possible to the marketplace. But we won't know exactly what the rates are until the bids come in. But based on the advice of bond counsel, that's why we feel it's going to be a good rate, because of how we're packaging it.
Thank you. Oh, that was good information. Anyone from the public like to be heard on this ordinance? I am not seeing anyone, so I will close the public hearing. Tom, would you like to move this?
Yes, I move to pass ordinance 2021-1875 on final reading and adopt as published.
I'll second.
Okay, in a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Ms. Zamara?
I have to abstain because I'm employed by a financial institution that issues bonds, and so that will be the case for this bond ordinance and the other bonds on the agenda tonight.
Okay. We're up to resolutions. If there's any we want to discuss. Bob,
Yes,
you're here. Markowitz, you want to talk about recreation fees?
Yeah.
What's different, what's new, what's on the fees that you're proposing?
Okay, as far as the camp lines go, those are all the same as last year. We're not predicting we're going to be able to offer a full day recreation camp, but I have lined up 4 of the 6 weeks afternoon sports vendors. So the goal is going to be to get 6 out of 6 weeks kids to get a full day experience without us being able to run our full day camp this year. It's going to hurt us a little bit, but it's going to be hopefully get it back the next year. We're not going to be able to use the schools this year, it's looking like. So we kept those camp fees the same because we're not adding much to what we're offering in that program. And next year we're going to take a look at redoing all the camps. There might be a rate increase there when we get back in the inside space. We have a little more defined programming without such COVID restrictions in, but camps, that was the feeling, to keep them the same. They're not, it's not really a high level of operating costs to put in. The pool rates, Anthony, I gave him a quick PowerPoint here, but we're looking at a 4% raise across the board for the pool membership rates. Our hourly expenses are going to increase 7.8% with minimum wage. That impacts over half of our labor at the pool. We're looking at a strong year coming back. We can't predict that it's going to be back at 2019 numbers because we are still going to have regulations in place. Other boroughs are holding out on their pool registration for April and later because they're not going to roll out these COVID regulations until then. Morris Township, other places around us. I would like to get the pool rates up soon, within the next week. We know we're going to be able to offer the public at least what we offered them last year. We have some other things that we are looking to do in terms of events and social programming that once we get those guidelines, we'll be able to roll those out quick. But I think what we offered the community last year and having a full season of that, I think that these increases are justified to pay our employees. And then let's see. That's about it. Anybody have questions about that? The rec committee unanimously approved the 4% raise across the board for the pool rates. And as far as the summer camp goes, I am planning like an upgrade package. So if we get into the schools, if everything works out perfectly for us, I'm going to send out a quick survey. How many parents want to do the full day? If we get it and it's cost effective, we'll hit that upgrade. We'll charge them the extra amount on top of what they're paying, and we'll run the full day. So that, even though I'm planning on a half day, there will be an upgrade package for a full day if everything shakes out in the ideal situation.
So many hits this year, you know?
Yeah.
Also, Bob, I think we considered the pool rates last year, and we kept them all the same. Is that right? Last year?
We raised them last year as well.
We did?
Yeah. I think we're going 4%. 4%. It was prorated with COVID, obviously, but I think you did that because the increase in the minimum wage, we're going to be looking at increases every couple of years here. It'll be up to 15 within 5 years.
Did
Bob,
we?
sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Did we charge the 3% fee for credit card usage in the past? Is that new, or is that something we've been doing all along?
That's something we've always done.
Do most people pay by check or credit card?
It varies. Mostly pay by credit card for sure, but there's people that pay every year by check, and all of our programs by check.
Okay. By the way, I think you get. I'll take the opportunity to give you a lot of applause for what you did last year. I think it was a masterful job getting the pool up and going, and it really helped the town during a very difficult summer.
Yeah, the idea was this year to really open it up socially, event-wise. You know, I'm not going to broadcast that yet. We have those plans, the rec committee and myself, in place. We're going to offer right now what we offered last year, with expectation the guidelines are going to lessen.
Bob and Tom C. I feel like I'd be derelict if I didn't at least ask the dotting the I question. Tom, I'm assuming that the current budget we're introducing next week that we've discussed, seems like almost weekly since October, includes the increase in labor costs as well as any alterations for fees that are required?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, at the request of Olivia Manning, I'd like to revise the title of Resolution 2166.
Yes.
I just used the title from the sample, but what I'd like to do is delete a representative of. So the title will be a resolution authorizing participation in the Main Street, New Jersey program and designating downtown Bernardsville, Inc. to assist in coordinating all program application activities.
Okay.
Before we move on, can I ask a question about 2157? We passed over that. The payment of bills?
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, ask questions on any of them before we...
Under the payment of bills, just out of curiosity, when I was looking at it, I saw that we paid, something like, I think it was $18,000 for snow removal to R&D landscaping. And then we paid an additional amount of, almost an equal amount for emergency snow removal to a different company. So we had to contract with multiple different companies to do our snow removal. Is that because of the heavy snowfall, or I was just curious why we actually ended up paying 3 separate companies a total of almost $40,000.
Councilman Hammond, that's sort of kind of a routine practice in the sense that you award multiple contracts and you hire the person that's available. They're not always available at the same time,
okay,
or they're limited into how many hours they can work. So we want a pool of vendors to draw from.
Okay. And I just want to point out on there's a typo in 2165, termination of 261 Claremont. The name Bernard of the owners, it's spelled differently, 2 different spellings in the first paragraph. So we probably ought to correct that since it's going to be a legal document.
That's my mistake. It's Bernhard. Apologize for that.
Bernhard, yeah.
Yeah, the first spelling of it is missing the H.
Yep, sorry about that.
Just wanted to let you know I was reading that stuff.
There you go.
I dictate my resolutions, so my secretary doesn't always understand.
So, Mayor, can I ask a question about 2166?
Yes, right. That's the Main Street.
Yeah. So this question's for Olivia if she's still in the audience. So, Olivia, how do we? Two things that I think are critical to the success of this program long term. How do we ensure that the group stays apolitical, which I think is critical to its long term success, and also to ensure that it always remains, frankly, a group of the community for the community? Instead of anything that's dominated in one way or the other by either individuals or council or any of those other competing parties in town.
As far as the political aspect of it, we have a statement, if you will, of complete political neutrality that we are putting in place, and I will be putting it up on our website so everyone will be able to have access to it. Everyone that will be joining, whether it's on a committee or a board or in any capacity working with us, must agree to this statement, because it is crucial to us that there are no political opinions imposed. There are no decisions made based on politics in any capacity, because this is not what this is about. This is not in any way, shape, or form what we refer to be able to do anything in a Main Street program, let alone as a nonprofit organization. If we even start to think about politics in any capacity, we could potentially lose the status of a 501c3. Right. And I'm happy to read portions of it to you if you would like to hear the actual.
Sure, I think it'd be great. Yes.
It's pretty short. So Downtown Bernardsville is a 501c3 organization. To maintain that status, none of the resources or staff of Downtown Bernardsville can be used for partisan political issues and purposes. The law prohibits our participation or intervention by publication or distribution of any statements or otherwise in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for public office. In practical terms, that means that Downtown Bernardsville will not accept contributions, financial or in kind, from political parties or campaigns. Our board members, volunteers, and staff are chosen solely for their areas of expertise, merit, interest, loyalty, and general desire to be a part of Downtown Bernardsville's mission, and not for any political view or affiliation. Downtown Bernardsville social media accounts will not include comments that favor or oppose candidates or political parties. And Downtown Bernardsville will not co-sponsor or support political events hosted by political parties, campaigns, or other similar politically partisan entities.
Thank you, Olivia. I think it's wonderful.
Okay.
How do we justify giving money to a 501c3 and protect ourselves from the next 501c3 that comes along?
That's a really great question, and I understand the concern on that, and I feel for that. This is not us requesting a donation. This is a requirement of the program, which is operating on a state and national level, to receive support from in our case, the borough, or from any town, for any town that does a Main Street organization, to receive support in the form of this resolution and a financial support. We, just the same, are reaching out to the entire community for financial support. We are conducting events that would sell a ticket and get financial support in that respect. So the financial support that you're giving is not a donation to a 501c3. 501c3 is simply the makeup of how we are operating this program. It is not a request for, supporting a charitable cause. This is to provide a benefit to Bernardsville that the borough will benefit from by an increase in tax base and other benefits. So it's really an investment rather than a donation or offering a nonprofit organization just some money. This is an investment from a place that's going to benefit just as much as everyone else in the town.
In the context of our finance committee meeting, we also addressed this concern, I think, with Jack Pidgeon's advice and Tom Serznicki's input. We structured a deliverables list and a fee for services agreement. Is that right, Tom?
Yes, Miss Manning was kind enough to. We had it requested for the reasons that Councilman Donahue mentioned. this can't be a donation. The town's not allowed to give donations except to very limited groups. But what we did is essentially received a proposal with itemized budgets. And so really the borough is buying marketing services for its downtown area.
Yeah, that was my impression, is that this is not a donation. We essentially, the resolution we're going to vote on is a contract, if you will, and we're getting services for the money we're paying. So there are deliverables.
That's true, but I did change it to some extent, because as I was preparing the resolution, I discovered that Main Street, New Jersey is actually established by statute and there are DCA regulations. So under the circumstances, I didn't couch it in terms of a formal contract. But you are right, we are getting deliverables.
Yeah, it's not formal. It's not, but it is, in that sense. But I do have a question along those lines, if I could. First of all, let me just preface by saying I'm in support of this. I'm going to vote for it. I think it's a great idea, and it just builds upon what's already been taking place last couple of years. But I think somebody else has mentioned about a public-private partnership, and part of the language of the document you gave us talks about that you're going to get involved in branding, logos, and things of that nature, which are inherent to the borough. I think while we have two members of the council, the mayor and one of our council women who are on your board, I think probably ought to be. They're not there in their capacity as an elected official. Oops, is there background noise? But I think you ought to consider. Probably not make that decision tonight, certainly, but I think you ought to consider having essentially a named spot on your board for somebody from the council, so we have that linkage, we have that interaction and that collaboration.
Jeff, one of the things that I was thinking about, and Olivia, I'm going to suggest this, again, in the spirit of maintaining political neutrality, is that if there's a Republican there should be a Democrat. It shouldn't be along party lines, and we should make sure that there is political neutrality if it ever exists at all times.
Well, and let me argue against that, because I view us all, we all have parties, but I view us all as nonpartisan. The old phrase, there's no such thing as a Democratic pothole or a Republican pothole.
No.
And there are times when there's going to be, for almost 40 years, there were all Republicans on this council. So, that may not be feasible. I think we ought to not promote partisanship. I think we ought to promote nonpartisanship, and I think they leave that up to Olivia. I think there ought to be a place for the mayor as the mayor on her board, and as well as one other council person. But that's going to be Olivia's decision. I'm just going to make the statement that I think that would be a prudent thing to do.
I will interject and say that ultimately it really isn't my decision. I am fortunate enough to be part of making that decision, but it is not up to me in the end. We have a board of directors for a reason, and I hope for that board to expand over at least the next few months to the next few years. And, I'm sure there's going to be changes and turnover, and that's part of the game. There will always be different people sitting in, and that's what we hope for, because new people is fresh ideas and fresh perspectives. So it's never going to be my decision whether or not a council person should be on it. Now, a council person, because of their political affiliation, the statement I just read, we wouldn't be able to make a decision based off of that. And in the end, we're a private organization. So if it's on us to say, yes, let's do it this way, then we will decide to do it that way. It's not certainly based on a political decision of parties that are involved. If a council person would like to be on our board and they really want to be part of this because they have experience or they really are passionate about something, then that's one thing. And you just also happen to be a council person. That's the perspective I have.
I gather that that's where they are now. But I think that, since we're using public dollars, and because you're going to make decisions that profoundly affect, the borough, there ought to be a formal linkage between the council and the organization. That's what makes it a public-private organization. So you're absolutely right, and I agree with you. It shouldn't be it shouldn't be based on what somebody's party is. It should be just based on the fact that you have an elected official who's a direct linkage by virtue of being an elected official.
Correct.
If I can just remind everybody as well, what we're approving here is for Olivia to apply, not Olivia, Downtown Bernardsville to apply. There's a lot of work. I think I sent, or Olivia sent you the application. It's really intense. There's a lot of information on that application. There's a lot that we have to qualify for. So this is just the first step. This is putting in the application. We're not there yet. We're not we're not voting to be a Main Street. We're voting to apply to be a Main Street. The other thing is I want to remind you that Wednesday night, Downtown Bernardsville is having at 7 o'clock another town meeting to talk more about what Main Street is about and to have community input for that. So if you're free Wednesday night, Olivia will be posting that probably on their webpage and Facebook. That's a great way to get more people involved, and we'll need a lot of help getting this application done.
I understand fully, Mayor, that we're just authorizing an application, but we're also committing $12,000 a year with a commitment for 3 years. So it's that's where I'm coming from. We're committing public dollars.
But that's if we become a Main Street. If we don't.
Well, I have every confidence that we will. I believe in Olivia.
So much pressure.
So would it be fair to say the appropriation isn't operative until Main Street?
That's correct.
I think it's, we have to have the designation before we give the money.
And my other question is, how does, like they talk about a business manager, how does that factor into the timeline and the budget, especially because 12,000 a lot of money and also not a lot of money if you're hiring people, especially. And what we don't want is, we need 24 for next year and something that we get like mission creep.
That's actually a really valid statement. Many towns start a lot higher. Isaac, actually, who was here before, had mentioned to me when I first told him that we were asking for 12,000, he goes, whoa, that's less than the poorest community in Appalachia in their program. So, you're right. It's not a lot of money, but at the same time, it's still a significant amount. And we're in the middle of a pandemic and, there's a lot involved, but ultimately, the commitment for 3 years is for me to not come back to you next year or the year after. Although at the same time, it's part of the wording that I would continue to come back and request it if there's a different council and so forth. The funding ultimately is going to help us take the next step. But what I really want to make sure that everyone understands is even if we do not receive designation this year for any reason, and we're not quite ready financially or whatever the reason is to move forward, we are going to still continue this work as much as we possibly can. And hiring somebody is going to be a key component, and being able to hire somebody is going to be a key component to move forward. I am not the person that will continue on. Maybe I am, but right now the idea is that hiring someone who's been doing this for many, many years can bring their expertise in to do the day-to-day. And it's not just a board of directors, it's committees. It's 4 distinct committees that work on specific projects. And those committees are going to be 3-4 people, maybe more, depending on how many volunteers contribute. So it's not just a certain sum of money or one specific person as the executive director or any of that. It's a collection of all of these people working together to do the common work. So hiring an executive director, we can't hire somebody full-time right now because I think the going rate is like $65,000 a year for an executive director. My goal is to start small. That's what right now, being in the middle of a pandemic, that's what seems in the smart move to make, is to slowly make our way forward and to continue the work that we've already done and then add on to it with things like small grant programs for some businesses in town to be able to get a sign for their store. Doing some marketing and promotion, getting some materials in place that will invite people to want to open their store in town. I just had a wonderful woman talk to me this week about, whether or not she should open her dance studio in town. I mean, a dance studio would be a wonderful addition to our community. It doesn't have to be another store where you walk in to buy an item. It can be something that's a little bit different, outside of the box, and invites the community to get together in different ways. So there's a lot of work involved here. It's not just one person, not one thing, not one amount of money. It's the collective of all of it that's going to be crucial for the decisions that we make moving forward.
Yeah, and the $12,000 is not the full budget for the year. I mean, it's assumed that there will be fundraising, ticket sales, event sales. So that's a piece of what it will be.
Yes, the events, more or less, they generally pay for themselves. So, we can continue the events when we can have them, of course. So that's taken care of on that front. But we are sending an appeal letter out to the community for private donations. Like most main streets operate off of their private donations. There are sponsorship opportunities that larger corporate companies are welcome to come in and be a sponsor. That's how Main Street America operates. They have very large corporate sponsors that work with them. So it's not just one stream of income here. This 12,000 is a small portion of the bigger picture. And it's the collective of all of the areas that will make this more successful.
And hopefully grants too.
Yes, designation does open us up to grants. We, of course, can't rely on grants because those are also obviously hit or miss, but we have the opportunity as a designated community to get some of that funding. Much to what Isaac was mentioning earlier about Metuchen, he has the opportunity to go out and get those grants and get COVID relief in a financial way to turn and give back to their businesses because he's part of the community of designated Main Street organizations. So
yeah,
if we aren't that, then we don't get that opportunity and we just have to find other ways. But
well, the nice thing is you also have the in-kind grants from Main Street to have to know what resources are and where you can find them. Mm-hmm. And training and the things that kind of help you to be more professional in how we approach things. So
yes, we actually just signed up for the big workshop that they usually do this giant conference every year. This year it's all virtual, but it's a 3-day very intensive training session and open sessions. There's a whole day actually designated for small businesses that any small business is welcome to participate on that day and listen in on the meetings and pieces of information they have available. So there's resources available and help for not just businesses, but even the residents and the borough itself. There's tons of opportunities with this program. And I do encourage you to really consider it as a step towards the future.
Does anybody else have any other questions on any of the resolutions or that one in particular or any that are on this 2157 to 2167?
I just wanted to make a quick comment on the Main Street one. I think, this is borough commitment for the downtown, right? And we all know that it needs help. So Olivia, thank you first for, moving this forward and putting, some semblance of what it can be. And hopefully we'll get, what I want to really call out for is that Olivia needs people to help, right? There's people that are on the board. There's 4 committees that are underneath. And if we want to make this sustainable, we have to have the residents, businesses, everyone needs to step up and volunteer if they have some, resources, experience that they can help, because this is not going to be sustainable if it's just Olivia trying to move this forward year over year by herself, right? And the Main Street designation is not going to remain a designation if we get it. So we need to make sure that people are supporting with their time. I appreciate those who came tonight to step up and speak up and support Olivia in this too, and downtown Bernardsville. So I think Olivia, maybe in your meeting, we can, do the same call for help and volunteers, because the more people we have, the less work it is for each of them, and the more ideas and diversity and experience that you get. So I think that that's going to be something that's really important for me to make sure that this is sustainable over time.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Gina. Yes.
Yeah, well said. Thank you.
For the people.
So I just like to, I didn't have a chance to speak before, so I just like to mention as well that I think this is a good idea. I think that, moving forward, it's going to be a combination of things that the council has been working on for a number of years now. The Quimby Lane, the Quimby Village, the redevelopment area in the Audi site, this Main Street designation. These things are going to have additive, I think, effects, and we're going to get to 1 + 1 = 3, I hope. And I think this is one of the components that can help to build the momentum for this town.
Well said, Tom.
Thank you.
So, Mayor, are we pulling any resolutions off, or can I move resolutions 2157?
I think we've covered them. Well, I don't think anybody else have any questions on any of these.
I would say we should move 61 to 63 off so that Councilwoman Zamara can abstain on those, and then
yes,
the rest.
Okay. Yeah, let's leave those three, the three financial ones. So 2157 to 59 and 65 to 67.
Yeah. So I'll move. Okay. Second. Let's go.
Okay. Roll call.
I'll second anything that Chad does.
Yeah.
Ms. Zamara? Ms. Zamara?
Are we on 57 to 60?
Yes.
And
We're 57.
I'm sorry, and 65 to 67.
Yep.
Yes.
64 to
64. 64 to 67, yeah.
Everything but 1, 2, and 61, 2, and 3. How's that?
Right.
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
Ms. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
No.
Okay. So now we will move 2161 to 2163.
I move resolutions 2161 through 2163.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Ms. Zamara abstained.
Okay. We are now on discussion items. So 6C, we have this fair ballots resolution. I think this went to the whole council, this letter, didn't it? Asking about this. So I put it on the agenda to discuss. Anyone have an opinion?
I mean, where did it come from? I'm always very skeptical of these types of things. I mean, it all sounds and reads great, but the unwritten is where I feel uncomfortable.
No, I don't think it reads great, and I think there's a lot of pejorative language in it. And I think it came from a former council person in Fanwood, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds right.
Sorry?
I think that sounds right. Yes.
Yeah. First of all, there's some errors in there. It says that we're the only state in the union that has ballots that way. That's not entirely correct. You can vote down a party line in Illinois, for example. So, I would agree with you, Councilman McQueen, that we don't know whether all the facts that are stated in the whereases here are accurate.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's I think one has to go on the presumption that people go into the ballot box and they know who they're going to vote for once they close that curtain. That may not be true 100% of the time, but I would say that it's true the overwhelming majority of the time, and they look for that name. I think the argument that you put somebody at a disadvantage if they're not on a particular row or column is wrong. As a matter of fact, as an alternative, if you listed all the names alphabetically, we know that people with last names that are in the last half of the alphabet are at a disadvantage. That's
yes, that is true.
Well.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I actually looked at this one really bothered me. So I looked up the ballots in some representative states. I just picked them at random, Texas, Alabama, and Minnesota. And interestingly enough, they don't have county line or party line rows and columns, but they also don't have any space for write-in votes, which in and of itself, I think, is wrong and undemocratic.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why we're changing something that seems to have been working in this state quite well. I would vote against this proposal.
What would this resolution do anyway? We don't control this.
Yeah, I don't think it does anything. I think this is nothing more than the type of grandstanding stuff that I generally
Well, it puts
oppose.
us on record to encourage the state to change what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah, and to
what they're asking.
Chad's point, I always worry about, like, the ulterior motives and the, what looks on the face of it looks like it may or may not make sense, but it's something completely different.
Yeah, I don't know where this. I'm not supportive of something that I can't trace.
Let me ask, does anyone want to move this forward?
No.
All right, dead. Okay. Next.
Thank you for being efficient, Mayor.
Well, they asked us to talk about it. You talked. Thank you. Next is the draft ordinance prohibiting the operation of any class of cannabis business within its geographical boundaries. And as I did attend a briefing by the league, if I can just kind of look at what my notes were. And I think I sent you some information on this.
Yeah.
Basically what the new legislation says is we have 180 days to opt out of classes 1 to 5. And that date is August 22nd. If we opt out, we can opt in at any time. So if we want to allow more time to do research, look at our zoning, how things could or couldn't work, we can, and then make a decision, we can do that. But if we don't do anything, we will automatically be opted in for 5 years, or we can choose to opt in. You're committed for 5 years. If after the 5 years you say, you know what, this isn't working in our town, we want to stop, you can opt out, but any businesses that were already established will be grandfathered. Class 1 is a cultivator or grower. Class 2 is a manufacturer. Class 3 is a wholesaler. Class 4 is a distributor, and Class 5 is a retailer. Class 6, yeah.
No, Class 6 would ask about, because I'm as concerned about drug couriers roaming around our town as
Wait. Class 6 is delivery, and you cannot prohibit delivery in your town.
Oh, you're kidding, really?
No, we can only opt out of 1 to 5. 6
wouldn't the deliveries, the couriers have to be like attached to the retailer? They couldn't be like an Uber, Grubhub, or a drug hub kind of thing where you can just have someone randomly deliver your drugs to you?
I think the delivery is intended for the medicinal marijuana.
Oh, I got it. That's intended, but the practical application is going to be people too inebriated to actually go get their own drugs.
Well, better they stay home than go out on the road.
Well, my personal opinion on this, look, I want to see where this settles down. I don't want to automatically opt in for 5 years. I want the ability to choose. So I would choose to opt out now with the open mind to evaluate what's going to happen in the state to make choices that are more informed later.
Yeah.
Can you clarify if we opt out now, do we then have to wait the 5 years before we decide to opt back in, or could we, if next year we could decide to opt in?
You can opt back in on August 25th if you want.
Can I ask another question, Mayor?
And that's a legal opinion, Jack? You confirm that?
Yeah.
Yes, I do agree. Now, if you've read the bill, it's 240 pages and it makes your hair hurt. But that's my interpretation as well.
Well, I tell you, and I tend to agree with the mayor on this one, and also with Councilman McQueen, because they're already talking about changing the bill. They're already talking about changing the notification component by the police. So I mean, they haven't thought through this bill in the first place. You know?
If I can just finish from what I got at the briefing. Just to give you the rest of the information, the local tax that would be paid to us as a municipality is 2% for a cultivator and a manufacturer. And a cultivator cannot get a farmland assessment. The tax would be 1% for a wholesaler and 2% for a retailer. The applicant has to have been a resident of New Jersey for 2 years, be 21 or older, and subject to background and criminal check. There are limits on locations, so you cannot sell marijuana in a grocery store, a deli, indoor food markets, any retail food or liquor stores. Other things they stressed were municipalities cannot have an ordinance prohibiting underage use of alcohol or cannabis on private property. If in the case of underage possession or consumption of either alcohol or cannabis, The first violation, you get a written warning and no parental notification. I think that's what
That's all I need to hear.
Hannah's talking about. Is that's the sticky. That's what people are very upset about. The second violation is a written warning and then parental notification if they're under 18. And the third violation, you get a write-up and a referral to social services and parental notification. The other thing that was, I think, is tough for police is odor or plain sight is not suspicion enough for a search. And if anyone underage who is stopped because, and there's an odor or plain sight, an underage person is not capable of consenting to a search. So even if you see it, you can't, look to see if, there's more or there's any other issues going on. So it's there's a lot of things that still need to be worked out, I think, in this legislation. So.
And we can't opt out of those enforcement provisions.
So another clarifying question then for Jack and or the mayor, if it was covered in your presentation. My question would be that there's the issue of anybody allowed, if we allow it, anybody that would get allowed would be grandfathered, and we can't change it for 5 years. But let's say we disallow it in the 5 locations. There was some reconsideration in year 2, and we allowed one thing. Is that then like 4 years of allowing it, or can we rescind stuff?
No, it would be grandfathered. Once somebody gets permission to do it, they're grandfathered in the future.
Understood, but I'm saying, like, right now, could we say no, a year later say yes, then go back to no in that 5-year time period, and only the people within that year? So basically, once you say yes, you're on the 5-year cycle.
That's right. Even if you opt in later, you're still, you just go into the 5-year cycle later.
Okay. Well, I agree with the other sentiments that, right now it's too early to say yes to anything, and that we should, say no to the 5 areas for the time being, and then, give ourselves the opportunity to evaluate it going forward.
Does anybody feel contrary to that opinion? Because we can move this for public hearing tonight.
Well, we can introduce it.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to raise one more reason why we should object to this. And I say that as someone who is really vocally in favor of medicinal dispensaries back when we discussed this a year ago. The difference between a year ago and now is that under the new law, if you had a medicinal dispensary, there's no prohibition to having recreational at the same time, whereas before they were segregated. But the second thing too is that the tax to the community is only 2%. Back in 2019, the New Jersey League of Municipalities was lobbying the state while the legislation was being formed for 5%. And it was generally accepted that the break even for the community, because of the increased costs, administrative costs, police costs, all sorts of other issues, you needed to get 3% in order not to lose money. So the way this bill is currently structured, we could lose money if we approve this. So I even though I'm in favor of medicinal dispensaries, I will vote against this.
Would anybody vote for it? Anybody want to opt in? Hearing none.
Yeah.
Anthony, what number would this be?
It would be 2021-1876.
Okay, would someone like to move it for introduction with a hearing on
What's the date?
March 22nd.
I will.
7 p.m.
So I'll move ordinance 2021-1876. You said that was on March 26th?
22nd at 7 p.m.
A public hearing.
On a public hearing on March 22nd, 7 p.m. to be published
Into law, whatever.
into law. Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? Okay, so we'll have the public hearing at our next meeting. Temporary outdoor dining, who was going to address that?
Well, I know that there was a lot of back and forth on this today. So the issue here is obviously as we get to the spring months, we want to reinitiate outdoor dining. And what happened during the zoning restructuring last fall was we adopted most of the provisions but it's my opinion. And Jack, one of the things that was left in there was a prohibition to use any parking spaces for that outdoor dining. So Jack, I know that we created a potential solution for this to allow what I think we intended to allow. I don't know if you want to elucidate on that at all.
Yeah, I think the way around it is to adopt a resolution extending the deadline on that provision in the COVID resolution we passed last year.
Okay.
And there's a reason it wasn't included in the downtown rezoning, is because it would be contrary to the municipal land use law, because you really can't override a site plan on a permanent basis. So if the site plan requires a certain number of parking spaces and shows it on the plan, then they have to abide by that. But what we're doing here, once again, is we're holding enforcement in abeyance for that particular section. So, and there may be other sections if Jeff comes up with them, but that's the only one I saw. So we could just pull out that one provision.
And Jack, is it possible to do that once again through the calendar year? Because I believe that was our decision last year. We decided to do through December 31st.
Yes, that's certainly in your discretion, and that made the most sense, even though it may get too cold at the end, just to extend it through December 31st of 2021.
I think that's what we should do as well. We don't, people need predictability, and we can offer that. I think we should.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Jeff Price, did you want to jump in there? I see you turned your.
Yes, I did. Good evening.
Hey, Jeff.
What I propose to do is reissue the permits that we had last year to the same group of restaurants. And this is a no-charge permit. And all I'm trying to do is be assured that they're going to have a similar setup as they did last year. The setups were approved by myself, by Glenn Miller, and the chief. And I just want to go through that exercise again, because we got sidewalk chairs, we got alleys with tables, and we got parking lots. And I think we need to know where those are.
I'm enthusiastically in favor of this. I mean, do we have to put in a formal resolution?
I think we could do it tonight. Actually, my initial reaction was by resolution. But
right.
I think tonight we could do it by motion to amend resolution 20-155 by extending the deadline or the termination date for the following provision to December 31, 2021. And that's the section that read, with respect to outdoor dining, restaurants and other eating establishments that do not have an outdoor eating area on the site plan as approved by the Borough Planning Board or Zoning Board of Adjustment may be permitted to have outdoor dining subject to the general restrictions set forth in paragraph B of subsection 12-23.7, except that parking spaces may be temporarily converted to dining spaces with the approval of the chief of police. Folding chairs may be used and sales of food and drink may take place outside. And I think we could expand that also to cover even those restaurants and eating establishments that do have site plan approval of outdoor dining, that they can take advantage of this provision as well through December 31st, 2021.
So I'd like to move. Sorry, go ahead.
Just a question. Listen, I'm all in favor of this, and I wish we could make it permanent. If you tell us we can't do that because of the municipal land use laws, then my question is, when the state of emergency, the public health emergency is over, does that keep us from doing these extensions? In other words, could we extend this year after year after year and just do a temporary extension every year forever?
Yeah, no,
okay.
we won't be able to do that. And I'd also like to note for the record that most of these restaurants, at least those with liquor licenses, have also relied on the state, which allowed them to expand their licensed premises.
So we cannot do this indefinitely. Once the public health emergency goes away, we're not able to do this anymore.
That's correct.
What you're saying?
Well, I guess
Jeff,
so.
You can do it, of course, but you'd have to do it through your master plan reexamination and update of your zoning codes.
So that's what I was wondering, Tom. So if
right.
Jack and Tom can talk, I guess this would be a planning board item. If we can talk about what alterations were necessary, I can bring that to the planning board.
Well, but I don't think we can amend the MOU requirement for site plan approval. Once the planning board grants site plan approval, I don't think an ordinance can override that and say you don't need that many parking spaces. But I just think they'd have to go back and get amended site plan approval at that point in time.
So, but could we expedite that without fee or normal process?
Sure, we can set it up.
So for right now, we can do this resolution to extend it through December again.
Yes.
And then, look into how we could make this permanent. Or, do some of the research.
The only thing I would caution is that, off-street parking can accommodate right now vastly reduced capacity, even though because it's limited to outside. So the studies would have to look at what would off-street parking look like with full capacity indoor and outside. Yeah. So I think it would take an analysis, but quite frankly, I feel like the most appealing places around have the lowest mandated parking requirements, but they also have garages somewhere.
Well, so with that,
we're working on.
I'll move to amend 155 to extend its deadline to 2031, 2021.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Absolutely.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Ms. Zamara?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll start issuing these temporary permits back out to the individual restaurants, confirm that they are having the same setup as they did last year, run it past Kevin and Glenn, and we should be ready for warm weather.
Jeff, just one question for you.
Yes.
For people who got it last year, makes sense for you to reach out to them. What about the newer places? There's at least one or two newer places in town. Should we just give them a ping to let them know that this is available to them?
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, the draft alarm ordinance, I believe that came from Public Safety and Chief Valentine. So there are some revisions to the alarm ordinance. Anybody want to address those?
Oh, I think the chief can probably speak more in detail, but we considered it as basically an approach to easing the burden of both residents and the police as far as registering alarms and being able to respond to false alarms. Patrolman Richard put together a really good PowerPoint, which I was probably negligent about sharing, but it was very well done, and the chief can fill you in on what it really means to the officers and how it makes their job easier.
Sure. So we had a rather extensive discussion about this proposal at our last public safety meeting. And really what it boils down is to two areas that we would like to make some revisions in our existing alarm ordinance that we already have on file or on the books. Basically, in a nutshell, what we're looking to do is require now a registration of all alarm systems within the borough with the police department, and we would be charging a registration fee for that registration. And the second thing that we would be doing is restructuring the way we handle the penalties for violations of the existing alarm ordinance, and especially in the area of false alarms that we receive. In the past, when there was a violation or a false alarm that was chargeable under the ordinance, the violations were treated almost like quasi criminal offenses, where people were actually issued a summons for a false alarm, and it could have been, any number of reasons why we had the false alarm. Could be a mechanical malfunction, could be a weather-related malfunction, a human error. Number of different things could have set the alarm off, and it was really making our residents and people who live in the community almost feel like they were breaking the law. They were doing something wrong intentionally. Typically, when we got into court, they were being thrown out. We were not really getting convictions or collecting any fines on the violations. And the fine fee was, we felt, rather unreasonable and unfair. So for a lot of reasons, we kind of just drifted away from the ordinance. What we're proposing for the new one is to basically charge a series of service fees, for lack of a better word, and not necessarily make it a summonsable offense for a violation, for a false alarm violation under the terms of the ordinance. And really what would happen is, if we had a false alarm, and we'll go over the penalties in a minute, not even penalties, but the fees in a minute. It's very liberal. we give people a first, second, or third chance at a false alarm before the first fee kicks in. And then it's payable within 30 days of receiving the notice. And if they refuse to pay the fee, then it becomes a chargeable offense where they would be issued a local ordinance violation and have to go to court. And then the court at that point would make a determination as to whether or not the fee is payable and whether or not there's a violation or not a violation. So I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at the draft, or if you just want to throw out some questions about it, or if you just want to go over it, briefly, we can talk about it. But there's really two things that I need, or that we need council to discuss tonight. One is the fee for the registration. Do we want to do a one-time fee, or do we want to have an annual fee? And what would be the cost of the registration? And then the second thing is the fee schedule for the violations, to make sure that everybody's on board with the proposed penalties for the violations before we would put the final draft together for you to introduce.
Chief, if I could just ask a question. So right now, do people have to register their alarms?
No, they're not. Only commercial, I think, only commercial properties, I think I have to go back and look at it, are required to register the alarms.
So how will people know now that they need to do that?
So, yeah, obviously, if this is passed, we're going to get the word out. We'll get the word out through social media. We can use the Smart 911 reverse alarms, or reverse call system. We can go to the businesses. We can distribute flyers, and we'll get the word out. We'll do a press release. They'll certainly have more than enough time to register the alarms after the ordinance is passed. We're not going to be citing anybody for failure to register their alarms. And then when they don't register, once we get the first alarm, I believe there's provision in there where they have 30 days to register the alarm. Right. And then if after the 30 days they don't register the alarm, then they're subject to that violation for failure to register.
Mayor?
Yes.
Just from an efficiency perspective, there's two things to comment on here. One is when we get a false alarm, we don't really have the option of not reacting to it.
Right.
So so if you think about it, if there's a very strong weather event and a lot of alarms are going off, particularly because they're in poor shape, it detracts from our ability to actually respond to real emergencies, because we have to respond to them all. The second thing it does is because right now it's a summonsable offense early on, it forces us to spend a lot of time and resources going to court, which the way the chief has designed this, it treats it as a fee and a fine, as a fee rather than a fine, until you've ignored it for like the fourth or fifth time, at which point it then becomes a fine. So overall, I think it contributes to the efficiency, and it's maybe a little bit more customer focused, in a sense that we're not dragging them to court on a first offense.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a great idea to have people register, because, I think the police should know who has an alarm and who doesn't.
It's important, Mayor. A lot of times we get on the scene and we can't find the key holder. We can't notice the homeowner. We don't have the information, or it's outdated. The alarm company doesn't always have the up-to-date data. This will help us to ensure that we'll be able to at least contact the homeowner. And it's good for the homeowners too, in case there is an emergency at their house that we're there and we need to get a hold of them for some reason. At least we'll be able to be more helpful.
Right.
I think it's just important that we don't listen. Everybody who has an alarm has probably had an inadvertent false alarm sometime, in the course of a year or two or three. And I think it's important not to treat our residents as criminals. I think the idea of a fee rather than a fine is a good thing.
Yeah. And it's very generous to give you 3 false ones before you have to pay a fine.
It sounds generous, but if you have small children in the house who like to press buttons, and you have trees that are banging up against your windows with all the storms we get, and God forbid we get a power outage that activates your alarm system, So
Yeah.
it sounds generous, but it's probably more reasonable than it is generous.
Yeah, no, I think this is very reasonable. Does anybody have any, the main question is a registration fee. Anybody have comments on whether or not to have a registration fee?
So if I could just tell you how other towns do it, and then I'll let you have at it. Some towns do a one-time fee. Some towns do an annual fee. The one-time fees tend to be a little bit higher because you're only doing it once. The annual fees are a little bit lower. I think when we did our research, Far Hills was 20, Bernards was 25. We found some $30, $35 a year. PPAC Gladstone, I believe, charged $75 for a one-time registration fee, and that was it. You didn't have to register every year, only when information was updated, you would have to register. So do we, I think, do we want to charge require registration? I think is yes. Do we want to charge a fee? We do have administrative costs associated with this. We are operating a software package that has a module on it. There are fees that will be, not fees, but expenses that we'll have to put forth to manage this. So it just really offsets our expenses. We're not looking to make profit on this.
Chief, is it possible to allow the homeowner choice to say, look, if you want to pay a one-time fee, $75, here you go. If you want to do it annually, there's option B?
Yeah, it would be, it's possible, but it's a little harder to track that way for us to keep track of it, I think.
So it's not going to be an automated commuter system then that'll.
Well, I don't, can we split it? I don't know. I have to look and see if we can split it. I know we can do it one way and put into parameters of when the registrations are going to be due, like to set it, but I don't know if I can set one for every year in one, for one time. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the software to see if that's possible. But quite frankly, I don't know if we want to expend the time going out collecting the fees. I mean, I would prefer to do a one-time fee, but if you want to do it annually, that's fine.
Every year.
If you did it annually, you're going to have trouble with compliance and getting people to remember to do it in the third and fourth year. I think one and done.
I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Even just every year with dog licenses, I'm sure it's hard to get people to keep renewing. So. And
what are you thinking? $75, Chief? So if you $75, you're good for the life of your home. Is that sort of the thought process?
The life of your alarm.
Yeah, PPAC $75. I mean, we could do 50. We could do 75. We're going to have more alarm registrations. I think we have more buildings than they have in PPAC. It's really up to you. I mean, I don't want to make it too expensive and too cumbersome. I don't want people to think like, gee, it's another expense or another fee. But on the other hand, if it's reasonable, I don't think it'll be a problem.
Chief, is there any obligation for us to check alarms in this, or is this sort of a passive?
As far as what? What do you mean by checking?
So I mean, you're not assuring or verifying functionality of these alarms, right? You're just.
Well, no, actually, there is a provision in the ordinance that's been in there that's not new. It has to do with the maintenance of the alarm systems. So when we get up to the home and we find that there's an alarm system that's not working properly and we're continually getting called up there, we can order a disconnect. We can order it to be repaired, and if they don't repair it within a certain number of days, they can be, charged with the violation of the ordinance for failure to maintain their alarm systems. So we're not inspecting alarms per se, but if we find a problem, we certainly want to make sure that the alarms are working properly. And the other side of this too is, just so you know, that these alarms, we're talking about burglar alarms, intrusion alarms, hold-up alarms. We're not talking about fire alarms here. As far as the fines go, all of that will be handled separately through a different ordinance that we have that fire prevention takes care of.
Right.
We don't want to infringe on that, and we certainly don't want to encourage anybody to turn off their fire alarms and their smoke alarms for fear of getting a fine. We'll let fire prevention people deal with that. But the registration component of that is important to the fire department and to fire prevention, that the registration component would in fact be required in this ordinance to register the alarm with the police department, with the borough. So we have the information on the homeowner for all of the alarms in the borough, fire, police, and whatever they may be that come in here.
I'd say $50.
I agree.
It's a new, it's something new, so we don't want to be too.
It's fine.
hard with it.
Now, you're not going back in time, are you? These are just for new ones that are installed?
No, it's all going, no, it would be everybody who has a functioning alarm system at this point would have to register their alarm systems, myself included.
More reason why I'm going to have my wife not get one.
Oh, it's $50. Okay, are we all good with $50 one-time fee? Okay. Was there anything else in
the second thing is I would like you to take a look at would be the fee scale for the false alarms. I'm looking at the draft here to see. I think
it was 100, then 200, then 250.
Correct. And so after the fourth alarm, for the fourth, fifth, and sixth activation, it would be a $100 fee per occurrence. And then for the seventh, eighth, and ninth activations, it would be a $200 occurrence. And it would be a 10th activation would be $250. And this is in any one calendar year.
Okay. And how do you determine a false activation? That means that, I mean, is there a definition that needs to be applied here?
I'll look at that. I don't believe it's really, if it's not, it would be a mechanical failure. It would be a weather-related failure. It would be a power surge. It would be a human error where someone pressed the wrong buttons. It could be any number of things. We don't have a definition for false activation, but we didn't really see a lot of ordinances that actually had a definition for that.
Well, wouldn't the definition be if you got there and there's no break-in? By
Yeah,
definition,
but
it
the
was
ordinance,
false.
Obviously, you have certain common sense, I think, dictates what a false alarm is and is not. And, at the point where somebody does not want to pay a fee, they do have due process available to them as if they could go, once they get the summons, they can go to court. And, the court will determine.
How often do you have a homeowner who has 4 or 5 false alarms in a calendar year?
That was my question too, Jeff. Thank you.
You would be surprised.
Well, are we talking about dozens, or are we just?
I don't want to.
Okay.
Number, but it's not uncommon to have that. We have those repeat locations.
See, my only concern is if there's things. I mean, if it's a properly operating alarm system, and there are things that are beyond the homeowner's control, like the weather issues, we're penalizing them for something that they can't control. Well, now, I understand if they have some sort of short, or the wire's not right, or the kids are pushing the buttons. Those are things that they might be able to control or fix. I'm just concerned about the things that we're penalizing people for things beyond their ability to correct.
So we had that conversation. And I think we thought that the 3 alarms was probably a reasonable number that wouldn't really lend to somebody getting a fine or a fee. It would have to happen 3 times before that happened. So we could look at it and see if there was some kind of, I don't know, Tom, do you recall if we had any thoughts on that? I remember we talked about it a little bit, but I don't remember exactly. I didn't think we felt it was necessary.
And 3 seems like a reasonable amount. If you're getting 4 to 5, maybe you should, if electrical storm's coming, just turn it off for the duration of the electric. It's kind of like, it's got to be a line drawn somewhere. And I think it kind of struck the right balance between sort of like, forgiveness and sort of admonishment.
And we do there will be notations made on these alarm violations. Like we will try to record, to the best of our ability, what the cause of the alarm was. So, if we get to the point where, there's a fine that people want to dispute, obviously the ticket isn't written by the computer. The fines are generated, the notices are generated, automatically for the fines, but the summonses aren't written until an officer reviews the case and makes a determination as to whether a summons is warranted in that case or not. Okay. I would suspect that obviously, if it's clear that, look, this is some, freak accident and should not be a chargeable alarm, that summons in the 4th instance would not be issued, but the alarm activation would be noted, and they would not end up getting a violation for that.
Counsel, there are, I'm going to guess, Kevin, that there are more than a dozen I'm going to say we're approaching what probably close to 100. I would, given my past experience, and these are the types of alarms that kind of get neglected over time. And when a large truck rumbles by, they'll go off. You know, a change in air pressure and they go off. And then the officers just get frustrated by continually having to go there. And it's very frustrating when it's in the middle of a real emergency. So I think there's going to have to be a little bit of judgment that the officers exercise. But if it's a repeat thing that just needs a little maintenance work, then there's not as much sympathy there.
And Tom, I trust.
I think that, if you're comfortable with this, Jack, was the plan to possibly be ready to introduce this tonight?
Yeah, we can introduce it tonight, and I'll submit it to Anthony.
And then we could take a look at it. I'll look at it with Jack and Tom to see if there's something that can be tweaked in there, as far as making that determination as to whether it should be chargeable or not. But that would give us some time to look at it again.
Yeah. Well, then why don't we just hold it to the 22nd before introducing, right? Because then you'd have to amend it.
Yeah, we're not in a rush to do this.
Yeah, we could do that.
That's fine. So Jack, we can clean it up now that we have the numbers. We're good with the fee.
Yeah, we have direction. Yeah. We can talk tomorrow and submit it to Anthony for the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Can I ask one last question that may have been asked already?
Go ahead.
But if so, I apologize. If someone has an alarm and it goes off and it's not one that's registered, you still have to respond to it, right?
Absolutely. We respond to everything. So if it's an audible alarm that somebody hears and we get called because somebody hears an alarm going off, we respond.
And then if they haven't registered, they've got 30 days to get it registered.
They'll be noticed that they have an unregistered alarm, and then that's correct, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next is correspondence. I shared with you a letter that the Diversity Council sent to the freeholders about the vaccines and making sure that all populations get serviced. Also, I think they talked about later hours because the vaccines are done at Raritan Valley during the day. And for people that have daytime hourly jobs, that becomes difficult. So I think it was a very well done letter. Be curious to see what the response from the commissioners, keep wanting to say freeholders, what the commissioners are. We also had a letter from Assemblywoman Ora Dunn in response to our 1571 opposition resolution. So that's still, and actually, well, that'll be in my report, so I'll give you that next. And there was quite a bit of correspondence from the New Jersey Business Coalition, who is also opposing Assembly Bill 1571, and they now have, I think, over 100 organizations that have signed on to oppose it. So what we're hearing is that it's off the fast track, but to not be overconfident yet because there's another voting session, I think, on March 23rd. But there's been a lot of movement from a lot of organizations. So we're hoping, now they're talking revisions to it. Ideally, we'd like it to go away, but at least if they're considering revisions, that's hopeful.
Is it still being considered by the Senate, or it has to get through the House to go to the Senate?
It's still in the Assembly.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of folks listening tonight. If you know a assembly person, this is one that, I think I speak for us all on council, at least I hope I do. This one needs to die because it's going to greatly increase the cost of doing business at the borough level in a way that I'm not in favor of.
Well, it'll completely stop any revitalization projects.
Yeah, and the alternative is, a lot more density and height, and the town would turn into something you didn't envision to make it go, but if this goes through.
Yeah, because it really cuts down on a developer's return on investment significantly. So, yeah, not a good bill. Okay, what next is?
If I could just real quick, go back to your comment about the extended hours on the Diversity Council letter. I don't know whether they've extended them to, the county is extended to evening, but I do know that they had RVCC up and running on a Saturday. So that's an improvement.
For the vaccine?
Yes.
Oh, good. Christine, yes.
Yeah. I'd also like to add, and I'm not sure the chief might know this or not, but I thought that the Berners Township Health Department was in the process of setting up a more local
They are.
place. Right. So that's something that I and make sure that we communicate to our community members and to the diversity committee so they know that it's something, you know, within the 10 miles or so of here. We're closer than Raritan Valley Community College. And then the other thing I wanted to add was about, they had mentioned that the county website and the state website are not, that are only in English, but that is not the case. So if anyone has or can communicate this to people, that you can click the translate button and put it into any language that you want for the state website as well as for the county website. So if it needs to be in another language, you just have to translate it with the click of one button.
Yeah, good point.
They also have translators for the county call center.
Yes, they do.
Right, that's also.
Yeah, and our CVS in town has also been added to the CVSs that are giving the vaccine, which is very good.
If our health department could hopefully get it locally, that would be great. And I have seen other towns that are offering it only for towns, like in LBI, it's only for residents, and in other towns, it's only for residents. So maybe, you know, hopefully that's coming for us soon.
Yeah.
As the vaccine becomes more available.
That's the caveat, Christine, is, you know, how many vaccines the county has available to distribute. And different counties have taken on different avenues of distributing their allotted number of vaccines. You know, we're not doing a municipality specific program at this point, but they are working on expanding the locations, hopefully in the future, where vaccines will become available through some satellite distribution centers in 3 different areas of the county. And, you know, there's some additional efforts to try to identify, you know, our vulnerable population as to how they may get better access to the vaccines as well. So, you know, they're working on that. But as of right now, the RVCC site is open 3 days a week. And, you know, you can get appointments on the state website there. You can register. And, you know, various different pharmacies and other places, Atlantic Health and other health systems are opening up as well. I know it's very difficult, though, to get that vaccine appointment, and they need to keep at it. And once more doses become available, hopefully it'll get easier.
Yeah. Okay. Next is my update. So on February 23rd, I attended the Somerset County Business Partnership Program, which they're doing a Remarkable Women series. This was a discussion with Commissioner Director Chanel Robinson, who's really, you know, a dynamic woman. It was a really good presentation. I attended a Mayor's Wellness Campaign webinar on leveraging volunteers in community programs. So we're trying to get some more volunteers for that committee and get that up and running. I attended the Somerset County Human Services Advisory Committee, which did a presentation by Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And a lot of the resources through Human Services I've been sharing with the Diversity Committee and Pastor Dan, because they do, there's a lot of services there for that they do in multiple languages. So I send them out to Pastor Dan whenever I can. On February 25th, our Land Use Committee met with the new owners of Griffin and Howe and the 56 Degree buildings, which are in the redevelopment plan, to go over what those guidelines are. We had the briefing on 1571. It's actually, yeah, it's March 25th is the last assembly voting date. So if we make it past that, we'll be good. I attended a program by the Garden State Initiative on New Jersey's business climate in 2021. What was nice, one of the panelists was Joe Colangelo, if you remember him from Boxcar. And he actually gave a shout out to Bernardsville because he thought we were, I don't know what the word is, but the fact that we adapted by having a drive-in movie and food delivery, and that we were very supportive of small businesses and people trying to do unique things during the pandemic. And they have made some policy recommendations, the ones we hear all the time about consolidation. So I don't know how far any of those will get. I went over, there was a Senator Booker gave an update on vaccines that we were just talking about. As of March 15th, we'll be in phase 1C, which is adding teachers. I forget what the rest of them are, but phase 2 is when everybody can go. So far to New Jersey, 2.6 million vaccines have been delivered to New Jersey and 2.2 million administered. What happens is on Tuesday, the state is given the numbers for the next week of how many doses they're going to get. Last week, for example, New Jersey got 168,000 Modernas, 166,000 Pfizer, and 73,600 of the new J&J. Unfortunately, J&J, I believe, are not going to be available for the next few weeks because they're having some production issues, but probably by the end of the month, they'll be also increasing their supplies. So, and there were a number of, I think, in today's ledger of volunteer groups that are helping. So they had a listing of resources. If anybody is still having difficulty trying to get an appointment, there are people who will get up early, volunteer to get up early in the morning when the sign-ons open to help people get registered. So, which is really nice. There's been a lot of volunteers helping with that. What else did we have? Oh, the Recreation Master Plan Steering Committee. We met with Pat Hoagland to go over the vision, mission, and goals based on the survey results and the focus group feedback. And we should have a public presentation for the council and the public in April.
Right.
And the finished plan in May. So, which will be great if we want to start doing projects in over the summer.
So what, if I can say, what's if the presentation's in April and the final reports in May, is the presentation in order to get feedback? Is that the idea?
Well, it's for the council and anything the public that, maybe they think isn't correct with the plan or want to add to the plan, any fine tuning of what they present. It gives us the opportunity as well as any members of the public.
I mean, Mayor, I suggest maybe we make that, like we have in the past, a special meeting dedicated to just that one piece.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that there will be lots of public interest. So maybe I think it warrants its own meeting.
Yeah, that's a good idea. As soon as we hear when he's got it ready, that would be well worth it. Because I know people are excited to hear.
Agreed.
Yeah. The chief had a meeting this week that we were at for the annex coordinators on the status of the emergency operations plan, which is due next month. And it sounds like everything's right on track. And I attended on Saturday. The fire company and first aid squad had their awards dinner for 2019. They're just getting caught up because for those of you that were here 2 years ago, they usually have a big dinner at Basking Ridge Country Club, which was really nice, and we were all invited. This year they could not obviously do. Last year they couldn't do one at all. This year they had a very small dinner in the firehouse. Told me to give you all their apologies that they couldn't invite the whole council. So I represented you, and it was very small, but it was really nice to see them recognizing their members, and I'm just going to read them off because I think they deserve a public recognition. 50-year membership in the fire company, Tom Carton. 40 years, Jim Piquel. 40 years, Robert Steinkoff. 40 years, Richard Pearson. 35 years, Ed DeFilippis Jr. 30 years, Dick Van Dyke. Dick Ike, don't mind me. 25 years, Scott McKay. And 10 years, Gene Mallon. And the firefighter of the year in 2019 was Gene Mallon. For the first aid squad, awards 20 years, Ann Stone. EMT of the year was Alan Liu and Alana Harrington. They shared it. And responder of the year was Matt Favreau. And, you know, it was just so impressive the number of calls that these people respond to who have jobs and families, and they just, you know, make the time to do all the training and to be there when people call. It's just a phenomenal commitment of volunteerism and just, you know, community service that really deserves tremendous recognition, you know, and the fact that we still have a volunteer fire and first aid, I think, is impressive. A lot of towns have lost that, and we're still getting, you know, some new people and some young people, which I think is terrific. So thank you all for your service.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'll second that, because the training demands, the time commitment is not insignificant. It's not. It's a lot.
Yeah. And hopefully next year they'll have the big dinner and we can all go. Anyway, administrators update. Tom, you have anything to share?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. A couple things. We hope to have a budget presentation for council on the 22nd. Finance Committee has been working through that, and we'll have some good slides to share with you in a community. We've been, as you know, we've received the RFPs for Quimby Lane redevelopment. We're trying to work around schedules, which is a little rough with the Easter holiday coming. But what we're trying to do is get the applicants to come in, introduce themselves to you in a community, let you know what their qualifications are before we get into the real meat and potatoes of doing the analysis. So we hope to schedule a special meeting when we can get everyone on the same page. Just to remind the community and council that our recreation spring programs are going to be opening this week. So we look forward to watching enrollments roll in. The reminder to the public that our crews are out there fixing potholes after a rather tough winter. So please be careful driving. We've initiated the mandatory diversity and inclusion training towards the latter part of last week. And this week we'll be kicking off the non-mandatory component of it. And last little thing to mention is that sewer bills will be going out next week. And if anyone wishes to receive email reminders, they can sign up for that.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any unfinished business? Anything still? No? Any new business?
No, Mayor.
Okay. We do have some.
Oh, I just want to make the announcement. I forgot. I don't know if it was announced before, but we did. We were successful in our application for a Sustainable Jersey grant, technical assistance grant, which will help us to look throughout the borough for opportunities for energy efficiency. Actually, we applied for some assistance in terms of looking at some of our building structures and lighting around town, but they're also going to look at other things like potential for electric vehicles, electric chargers, and anything else that might translate into energy savings. And so I don't know what a consultant would have cost, but we're getting it for free.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you. The other thing is you also got us a bunch of light bulbs, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this was through, gosh, I think it was RideWise. I can't remember, but they had some 60-watt LED dimmable bulbs. We're going to get 400 of them, their desire was that they be distributed to low-income families through the food banks and faith-based organizations. And so I'm working with our 2 police chaplains and some other organizations to make that distribution.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Anything else hanging out there? No, I think we're good.
Last thing, and this is a ways away, but registration is now open for the Raritan Headwater stream cleanup. So for those students who need to get their volunteer hours or residents who wish to participate again in the annual stream cleanup, the event is on April 17th. And due to COVID, it's separated into 3 locations in Bernardsville. So it's going to be 32B, which is the usual one, but also 32C and just plain 32. So 32, 32B, and 32C, all in town. If you go to raritanheadwaters.org, you'll find the details. But you can register now, and the capacity is a little more limited than usual because of the group gathering limits.
Okay, thank you. And just as last reminder, Wednesday night is downtown Bernardsville's community meeting. So please check their website or their Facebook page for the details on that, so that hopefully we can get more people interested and volunteering for the Main Street initiative. All righty, we do have 2 things for executive session. We will not be coming back out. Am I right, Jack?
Correct.
Okay, so thank you all that have been here. Appreciate you taking the time to attend our meeting. It's always good to have people involved in local government. So thank you for being here. And do I have a motion to adjourn into closed session?
I'll move.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Well, we will take a brief break.